one of the realities of going to Mass every day, which is not required, as you all know, but many people do, but other people may go to Mass or may not, but may look at the daily readings. One of the interesting things or the dynamics that happens is you can follow along the daily readings, or you can be sitting there at Mass and you can hear what's going on, but you may not connect it with the bigger picture. And by that, I mean, there may be a reality in a reading that you may go, okay, that's interesting. But you may not realize something historically significant in a particular passage. And as we go through the first reading, which I've been doing for years here, you will realize that there are some passages that are almost transitional, that, okay, this happened, then this happened, then ba, ba, ba. And then there are other passages that that if you understood what was going on, you'd stop and go, what? What did they just say? And one of the stories I like to bring out, and many people who've been listening for a long time would have heard the story before, but when I was in boot camp in the Navy, remember I was a sonar technician for the Navy. Many people think I was a chaplain. No, I was a sonar technician. So when I was a sonar technician for the Navy, when you first go in, everything is a recruit. Recruit. Everything's recruit. And we were somewhere in our 5th week out of 8 weeks. 5th week, where all of a sudden the company commander called us sailors. He says, all right, you be careful how you treat these men. These men are sailors. And one of the guys noticed that change in terminology. He just called us sailors. And it was almost like a throwaway line, but he picked up on it. He just called us sailors. Now we're no longer recruits. We are now sailors. And fascinating aspect, this one tiny little detail. Well, today's first reading is kind of like that, because what's happening is we're starting to see this question arise, and a lot of times our growth in theology comes from questions arising and then someone responds. So we're starting to see this question arise. Well, how are the Gentiles called to relate to the Mosaic law? Now, remember, since the time of Moses, and that's why they call it the Mosaic Law, you've had the 10 Commandments and all the laws that come out of the 10 Commandments, which you can find in books like Leviticus and Numbers and everything else in the Torah. So you have the Mosaic Law, and the Mosaic had very specific laws and also covenants and also dietary rules and everything else. And the Gentiles, A, didn't know about them, and B, because of that, they weren't called to obedience to them. And then all of a sudden, someone comes in and says, no, you can't just follow Jesus. You have to follow all the Mosaic laws. And this is what our reading is about today. People start showing up on the scene and one of the things they say, they have to be circumcised. Well, remember, circumcision doesn't come from Moses. It comes from Abraham. It is the ultimate sign of being a member of God's people. And remember, God said to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the grains of sand on the shore, as the stars in the sky, which if you're out in the country, you can see are quite a bit. Well, so they're putting these two facts together, and they're saying, no, everyone has to be circumcised, A, and B, everyone has to follow the Mosaic laws. And first of all, the Gentiles are going, wait a minute, this wasn't part of our little deal here. And then secondly, other people are coming forward and saying, no, that is not true, including the apostles. And one of the strongest opponent to the idea we have to follow the Mosaic law is, in fact, St. Paul, who was deeply tied into the Mosaic law prior to his conversion. He says, no, absolutely not. And we see that in Galatians. So this question comes up, and And it's still out there, by the way. Well, it's not out there. It's been settled. It was settled in the first century. But there are still people that bring that up and still follow it. One group that does this, and this is not an insult. This is not me saying, oh, and then there's them. No, not at all. This is the rule they follow. I'm not making any negative statement at all. Seventh-day Adventists. That's why they have their services on a Saturday. Seventh-day Adventists. They follow the old, at least, I'm not well-versed in Seventh-day Adventism, but I know enough about it. They basically believe to follow the Mosaic Law. So, including the having their services on a Saturday. So, because Saturday is the Sabbath. By the way, Saturday is still the Sabbath. Sunday is the Lord's Day, but Saturday is still the Sabbath. So that's why the Seventh-day Adventists do that. It's that same old question that comes up. Well, so here it is. This question comes up, basically, do we still have to follow the rules that the Jews had to follow? And this question is now being asked. Now, what is the sign of being in the covenant of with God today, as opposed to in the time of Abraham right up until Jesus? And the sign today is baptism. Baptism is that sign. Once you are baptized, you are part of the family of God. We know that theology. Well, prior to that, it was circumcision. So, as you can see, that is a powerful difference, and it also reflects something else that's really, 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 really important, and that is you have the Mosaic Law, which is an external obedience to the will of God. That's what the Mosaic Law is. It's an external obedience. Now, in Christianity, the law is written on our hearts, which becomes an internal obedience, and we're going to see that idea on Sunday in many churches in the world, because that's kind of where the focus is of the gospel reading. So you see these two different focuses. You see this understanding of, no, you have to follow the externals, and then you have the understanding that comes out of Christianity, no, you don't, because if you obey the law that's written on your hearts, then you will act in charity, which is the truth of the external, which is the ultimate goal of the external law. And it's not necessarily dietary laws and everything else. It is that you act in love towards others. Remember the words of St. Augustine, in all things charity. So this is a powerful growth period. And always know there will be disputes throughout history, and those are powerful growth periods. We're going through one right now. We're going through an intensely powerful growth period. And in the United States, it's being reflected in the difference between the Vatican II Mass, the Pope Paul VI Mass, and the Pope John the 23rd Mass. The Pope John the 23rd Mass is the last manifestation of what people call today the Latin Mass. I don't use the term Novus Ordo. Novus Ordo is a derogatory term, so I don't use that. But it's the last manifestation of Pope John the 23rd, last manifestation of what people call today the Latin Mass. And Pope Paul VI is the official name of the first manifestation of the Vatican II Mass. So you have those two. And that clash that's happening, and if you watch carefully, you can see there's a fruit coming out of this, even though it's a long term. It's going to be a long term in determining this. Eventually, someone's going to step in and says, here's the bottom line. And the bottom line was not put out by Pope Benedict XVI. Just going to leave it at that. And that is, how do we discern it? Now, but it's a classic example of, again, this dispute that's very intense. Now, see how intense the dispute is between people who are loyal to the Latin Mass and people who are loyal, such as myself, to the Vatican II Mass. Okay? See how intense that dispute is. And you can go back to today's reading and see this intense loyalty to the Mosaic law and to the rules that the Gentiles are called to follow. And you're going to see this intense dispute happening, which ultimately, as we've discussed in previous years, will be settled at the first council, the first ecumenical council, which ecumenical means the whole church coming together. The first council, and that will be in Jerusalem, and that is the council that actually is in the Acts of the Apostles. Remember, there's a council roughly every 100 years. And so the first council is the Council of Jerusalem, and then about every 100 years, roughly. It's not set in stone. It has to be every 100 years or any. It's just roughly it happens that way. Every 100 years, there is a council to decide a new question that comes up. One of the councils that brought forth something that you deal with every day is the Nicene Creed. It comes from the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. So we see this is the beginning of this process that will continue through the church all the way down the line. And so when you see some of the disputes coming into the church today, you can recognize this is part of a long-standing process of a dispute happens, and there are questions that come forth, and then there are ways to settle it. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single Monday through Friday. Remember to subscribe, to like, to comment, and we'll be right back right after this. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer, previews of upcoming podcasts, previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com, your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. Well, you may have seen the news, and it's really kind of fascinating when some of this comes together, but we have a new bishop in the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston. I'm from Boston. We have a place here called Charlestown, but that's not the same as Charleston. And Wheeling, Charleston, that's in West Virginia. Fascinating place, West Virginia. It's because I've been to Ohio a couple times, and if you're driving to Ohio, and you all of a sudden, there comes a point you find yourself in West Virginia. You go, how did I end up in West Virginia? But you do. Anyway, at least where I go when I've gone to Steubenville, Ohio. But Wheeling, West Virginia, it's a fascinating place. It's there in obviously this very rural state, and it's a fascinating place. West Virginia is absolutely gorgeous, as many parts of all parts of our country are. But let's read what he says here. The Holy Father, this comes to us, by the way, by the Vatican Press Office. You can look that up and you can find the news coming out. And a new bishop will always be listed under the words resignations and appointments. The Holy Father has accepted the resignation from the pastoral care of the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston, United States of America, presented by Bishop Mark E. Brennan. That means that Mark Brennan, Bishop, turned 75, and he turned in his resignation. Or the Holy Father has accepted it. Sometimes the Holy Father accepts them right away, and sometimes he says, I need you to wait a while. But the resignation letter has been sent in. It's always sent when the bishop turns 75. The Holy Father has appointed Bishop Evelio Evelio Manjivar Ayala, until now titular of Aeto and auxiliary of the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Washington as Bishop of the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston, United States of America. So now they have a new bishop. And Bishop Avelio was the titular bishop of Aeto. Now, what does that mean? When a bishop is named, they have to be named as the head of a diocese. So what they do is they give them a titular head, Titular, comes from the word title, of a diocese, which may be in some, obscure part of the world. But if you talk to any bishop who is like an auxiliary bishop, you say, oh, okay, where are you a titular bishop? They will tell you. They'll name some place. You know, I'm sure there was a titular bishop of Diego Garcia, which wasn't heard at all until this war happened. We almost ended up going to Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is an island in the middle of nowhere in the Indian Ocean. This is true. Diego Garcia, I knew a chaplain who was there for a year. If, like, for example, you don't want to run out of toilet paper, you order toilet paper a year ahead of time because that's how long it's going to take to get there. So everything is ordered a year ahead of time. That's true. That's how in the middle of nowhere. Okay. And he was the auxiliary of the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Washington, which, of course, is Washington, D.C., but he's now been moved to be the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston, United States of America. Now, then it gives his basically resume, which they call curriculum vitae, which means basically his life story. Bishop Evelio Manjibar Ayala was born on the 14th of August, 1970 in Chalatenango, El Salvador. After studying philosophy at St. John Vianney College Seminary in Miami and theology at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome, he was awarded a licentiate from the Pontifical Scalabrini Institute of Pastoral Theology for Human Mobility in Rome. Okay, this is important. He was ordained a priest on the 29th of May, 2004 for the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Washington. So he's been a priest for roughly 22 years. That would put him somewhere around, possibly, I could be wrong here, 50 years old. Wait a minute, no, it says his age right here. So yeah, 70, he's like 56. Remember, I can't do math. He has held the following offices. This is very important. No one in the media is going to get this. He has held the following offices: Parish Vicar of Mother Seton in Germantown, 2004 to 2008, of St. Bartholomew in Bethesda, 2009, and of the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle in Washington, D.C., 2009 to 2013, Parish Priest of Our Lady Queen of the Americas in Washington, D.C., 2013 to 2017, and of St. Mary in Landover Hills, 2017 to 2023. Okay, I'm going to tell you why that's significant. He was appointed titular bishop of Aeto and auxiliary of Washington on 19 December 2022. So he's been ordained actually a little bit more than 3 years because he was actually ordained on the 14th of February 2023. Now, why is all of that important? One of the key things that's really important there is to see the parishes he served. And here you see this bishop is in contact with the people. Now, the media is focusing on something else. He came here from the United States to the United States from El Salvador without papers. He was I think he was a teenager, if that, at the time. And he was legalized and he did receive his citizenship in the United States. So a lot of people, oh no, they should be deported and all the other stuff. Well, no. There are a lot of people in that case. And by the way, the other thing it doesn't say, and you got to say he came in during his teenage years. I'm not exactly sure when he came here. You need to understand that. He was born in 1970. That means he came here, as many Salvadoreños came here during the Salvadoran Civil War, which was an absolute mess. And by the way, the United States had a very big part in that Civil War of supporting the government forces. And it's true. I'm not making a statement here. I'm just saying that's the fact. You can see it in the movie Romero, which now every American should see. Now every American should see the movie, especially in Wheeling, West Virginia, the movie Romero. And it's right in there that Archbishop Oscar Romero, now Saint Oscar Romero, has he wrote a letter to then President Jimmy Carter telling him stop sending arms to El Salvador. It's true. It's true. It's right there in the movie. So this is a fascinating story, and maybe that's a good thing to send to the media. Call the media and say, have you ever seen the movie Romero? Maybe you need to see it now if you haven't seen it. In any case, do understand that. Do check that out. Pretty powerful story there coming out of Wheeling, West Virginia, and of Rome, and kind of looking at this powerful reality of what's happening with this appointment. And we'll see what happens next. We'll be back right after this. Are you feeling overwhelmed, burdened by the challenges of life? Take a moment to find solace in the words of 1 Peter 5.
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time.
In times of trial, remember the power of humility. Trust in God's timing, for he will lift you up when the time is right.
Cast all your anxiety upon him, because he cares for you.
Release your worries and anxieties unto the Lord, for he cares for you deeply. Find comfort in his loving embrace.
And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, shall himself perfect, establish, and strengthen you.
These are just a few verses from 1 Peter 5, offering you hope, encouragement, and guidance. Tune into the Bible, the source of everlasting wisdom.
Bible verses based on the American Standard Version.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. So we're going to continue tomorrow, as we obviously are, with Acts of the Apostles. And tomorrow we're going to look at this discussion that ultimately leads to the Council of Jerusalem, because that's the major question. How do we settle this? And it happens every generation. You have these questions. The big question we're having right now is, what do we do with the people who want the Latin Mass, which, let's face it, it had a very deep spiritual reality, but we need something else too, and not as a supplement, but you have to realize the Vatican II Mass focuses on the Eucharist and the Liturgy of the Word. The Latin Mass only focused on the Eucharist because the Liturgy of the Word was in Latin. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, kind of following the same pattern. We're going to be back tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carl Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host, Father Carl, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.